This is the Inferno Podcast, the official podcast of UAB Athletics. Blazer fans, this is the place each week to get an inside look into UAB Athletics. This episode is brought to you by Pearl River Resort. Hey, green and gold faithful, welcome in. It is officially episode 39 of the Inferno Podcast. I'm your host, Landrum Roberts. It is time for our rundown, and every single week it is brought to you by Legacy Credit Union, the official credit union of UAB Athletics. UAB offensive coordinator Alex Mortensen, a rare treat to hear from the Blazer OC, not only about his career path as both a coach, but also as a player, his upbringing. It's going to be a fascinating conversation I can't wait for. And also, UAB offensive lineman and Birmingham native J.D. Morgan played last year for the Green and Gold since transferring from South Carolina. We're going to hear about what he expects and what he is noticing, not only from spring practice, but coming up in the summer months, and really excited about the Blazers in the 2025 season. All of that and more. It's episode 39, in case you hadn't heard. It's the Inferno.
Trent Dilfer here, head football coach of the UAB Blazers. I want to tell you about my friends at Legacy Credit Union. Legacy began as University Credit Union in 1955 and remains committed to UAB faculty, students, alumni, and fans. Not only do they support the Birmingham community, but they are also proud sponsors of UAB and UAB Athletics. Visit legacycreditunion.com and find out why you should become a member today.
The Inferno Podcast, Blazer fans, we've made it really, really easy for you. There's a lot of different ways that you can consume this podcast each and every week, and we certainly appreciate you doing that. But you're going to appreciate it because we're going to keep you up to date on everything going on within the athletics program, the Green and Gold. YouTube, it's pretty simple. At Inferno Podcast UAB, like, subscribe, ring the bell, tell your family about it, your friends, your neighbors, spread it around the office. This thing is going to catch fire, literally. Appreciate you joining us there on YouTube. But also Instagram, you can find us Inferno_pod on Twitter, or the X if you prefer, at InfernoPod_UAB. On Facebook, that's kind of the OG, right? UAB Athletics. You can find it there on Facebook. And, of course, you can go to UABsports.com. We got links. We got all different ways. There is no excuse for you to miss the Inferno Podcast each and every week.
The if in life, it's a world of possibilities. If you go for a night out with friends, if you can keep an eye on your money along the way, if you know you have overdraft protection with no fee transfers from savings, when you get a low balance alert, it's easier to say yes to fun. If that sounds good, try Regions Life Banking.
Stay ready for the if in life. Regions Bank embrace the if in life.
Welcome back into the Inferno Podcast. Landrum Roberts, along with UAB offensive coordinator Alex Mortensen. That's a part of our Coach's Corner for the week. It's brought to you by Pepsi and Viva Health. Alex, how are you?
I'm doing well. Really ready to get the summer cranking here, but and wrapping up a good portal cycle, but doing really well. Thank you.
It's time that we get the true brains behind the operation and all of the offensive success that UAB has enjoyed the last two seasons.
Well, we'd like to do better on offense. And then secondly, whatever success we've had has definitely been a group effort, not mine. So.
The coach speak already begins. We are less than 1 minute into this episode, and you are already doing what, honestly, I think a lot of people would do. Let's start for UAB fans that don't know about you. You were named, of course, when Coach Dilfer took the job, you were named UAB's offensive coordinator. And one of the first times you walked into the building, actually, I got to meet with you, and that was an interesting transition, but everybody's professionals. And it was really cool to actually watch from afar. But let's go back to your upbringing and where kind of Alex Mortensen, the genesis of the person, the player, now the coach. Everybody knows let's start with your dad. Sure. And everybody knowing who he was, and he was a mainstay, and being that journalist, that inside pro football guy that we all came to know, and I certainly did growing up. What was that like, and being born there in the Atlanta area, and kind of coming in and learning who your father was and what he did for a living?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's a lot to unpack. I think, someone recently, my dad got a really cool honor that he was inducted into a Hall of Fame and for sports broadcasting. And so I had to go accept that honor on his behalf. But in the speech, I said, hey, he might be in this Hall of Fame, but he really should be in the Hall of Fame of dads too, because I knew him as dad first, and when I was growing up, he'd actually not jumped to ESPN yet when I was really, really young and jumped to television. So he was, came up really as a sports writer. And, and I was, and I had a great mom, Mickey. So, I had a great 2-parent household with both of them. And so, hey, dad was dad first, and then, his career started to grow. And I got to watch him, really excel. He worked incredibly hard. With great tenacity in his profession. So that, I think, hopefully, helped set a good example for me growing up. And but he was there for me a lot. And so even growing up, I mean, he coached my baseball teams when I was a kid, because he could do that in the spring because he didn't have to travel as much. And so, really had a great childhood with both mom and dad there growing up on the south side of Atlanta. So my parents met. My mom's actually from Alabama. And my dad's from LA. My dad moved to Georgia years ago, and all his friends on the West Coast said, you'll be back in 6 months. And he never left. And then he met my mom in Atlanta. They were both working there. And so that's where I was born and raised on the south side.
What part of Alabama, your mom?
She's from Valley, Alabama.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is right on the Georgia-Alabama border. And
kind of near Auburn.
Close to Auburn, and is, I think, the only place in the state that's actually on Eastern time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so don't let that trip you up if you visit there.
That's right.
That's where a lot of my Christmases and Thanksgivings were growing up, was in Valley. And so, yeah, I was born and raised in Georgia and, ended up, we lived in a few different houses, but we had to kind of stay close to the airport. And we kind of set our anchor once I was in fifth grade on. And, man, it was an awesome childhood because, I was involved in a lot of sports, played everything I could play, played basketball, played baseball. Baseball was a big deal to us. Like I said, my dad coached our teams, and he was a heck of a coach. We won a lot of games, which was fun too, and even wrestled, and then didn't start playing football really organized till I got into 7th grade. So just kind of was in everything, involved in school, church, sports. So had an awesome time growing up. And had 2 parents that loved and supported me, so it was really cool. And then the professional part of it for my dad is, you think about it, his travel in season in the fall was typically on the weekends in the fall, is I guess a better way of saying it. So that usually coincided with my football games. So it's not like I'd never even been to the ESPN studios until I was out of college. So I think some people think, hey, were you just up there all the time? It was pretty normal, really, in a lot of respects. But there were some cool things, like in the off season, maybe I would get to take a trip, or we'd take a family trip somewhere, when he was working, off site. But he did quite a few things remote from Atlanta too.
I'm sure that you were probably there at the Mortensen household just hearing the phone ring, and that was back when we actually had landlines inside the house. I'm guessing he would field some pretty fascinating phone calls from some people that we would all know. He
did, yeah. He was on the phone a lot, especially like you said in the landline days. But and so yeah, I mean, I would, get done talking to somebody and go. To me, I actually look back on it more now and go, wow, that's pretty cool. Then I was just like, okay, talk to Bill Parcells.
Nah, no big deal.
What's for dinner? When are we taking batting practice? So. So I was one of those things for me. It was just very, very normal. And I think one of the cool things too is because he coached a lot of my baseball teams. A lot of my friends got to know him really well, and so for them, I think it was kind of like, hey, that's, Mr. Mortensen. That's Alex's dad. That's Coach Mort first, and more than it was the celebrity of TV. And sometimes I wouldn't really understand that there was, if you want to call it celebrity, I guess it's a celebrity inside of a niche of sports nuts. But. You'd go to the grocery store and somebody would say, hey, who should I take in fantasy football? They'd recognize him. But by and large, the people I was around, it was just like, hey, there's Coach Mort. He's jumping me because I didn't steal second base right or something like that. So
Where your athletic prowess, where did that come from? Because you're a very talented athlete. You mentioned the other sports, but ultimately playing at the college level at quarterback.
Well, one, let's not overstate how talented I am, but I think my dad was a good, high school 3-sport athlete that probably, didn't have all the things we have today to help him maybe go promote, create a career, beyond that. And then, my mom was a cheerleader growing up and was involved in dance. So, she kind of my mom was actually, coordinated, good athlete. And so, and then the other part was just, hard work, and I got eaten up with it early where, baseball was a big part of it because I can remember, my dad taking my first hitting camp. And one of my dad's friends puts his hitting camp on, and it was like, hey, 100 dry swings a day, 100 times off the tee, 100 of this, 100 of that, and you would see the fruits of your labor. And I think pretty early on in my life, I mean, as early as first grade, you see this cause and effect relationship of you reap what you sow, and I think that really stuck with me. And then the funny thing is, my mom wanted to. We had a really good relationship, and she cleared out space in one of the rooms in our house and would roll me ground balls. No kidding. And so I'd play all these imaginary games and dive for balls. And I know we probably sound like a crazy family right now, but I was the one that was always pushing them to do things because I was just eating up the competition in sports. Right. I love the presidential fitness test. I was the one. I was just obsessed with competing at a young age for some reason, and so I fortunately had parents that were there to support me. So I think some of it was just learning how to work at it too.
Presidential fitness test, Alex, that was terrible.
Other than the sit and reach, pull-ups, sprinting,
you do the rope
broad
climb?
jump. We did the rope climb. So but those were just. I was a competition nut.
You had the shuttle run where you had the erasers that they would bring in back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Are kids still doing that? Or I don't even know if they still use actual chalkboards. I know that you have overhead projectors and dry erase. That's what everybody does. But we had the actual erasers.
We did. Yeah.
And who knows whose classroom they came from. Visiting with UAB offensive coordinator Alex Mortensen. I want to go back to your dad for a second because the first time that I was able to meet your father, it was the first spring game that you guys had, and I was going through the media entrance because through radio we had a broadcast too, and it was kind of a dry run because we had a new crew that had been assembled, and I was going through the media entrance and where they check your bags and they tag everything. There's your father, and this is leading up to kickoff, and he did not have a credential, and they knew exactly who he was, but the reason they didn't, he didn't want to make you nervous, and he didn't want to add any extra pressure on you, but he wanted to come and kind of be anonymous and watch that. And I'll be honest, it was so heartfelt for me to watch that because of knowing how instrumental my parents were in my life. And that was just that was a really cool, heartfelt moment to see that he wanted to be there to support you, but he didn't want to add any extra pressure for you calling plays there in that spring game.
Well, I think a lot of times he liked to stay as anonymous as he could.
Sure.
I knew he was there. I mean, I knew he was going to. I think that was probably more him just trying to get isolated, you know, if he could. And I thought that was pretty cool. And it's funny, but that's pretty consistent with how he was on a lot of things. He just wanted to come hide out and be anonymous. And but yeah, it meant a lot because he made a lot of my games when I was playing, and then now coaching, he tried to get to everything he could. And it is funny, as we were preparing for our most recent spring game, I cut on the first one because I said, what did we do? How much did we show? Because sometimes you get, we're coaches, we can be paranoid by nature, right? Yeah. And so, how much scheme do we want to show? And so I went back and started flipping through that first game, and I'd never noticed this before, but the scoreboard shot on our tape actually showed him. So the whole first half of that spring game, I saw my dad as I was going through it. So that was something like again, I was reminded, it's funny you mentioned it, but I was reminded really recently, man, like he came all the way down here to see that. So that was pretty neat.
Really neat. I want to go back, and I know we're kind of interweaving and back and forth, forgive me, but you do have some things that we need to touch on. You played at Landmark Christian. You were the Class A Offensive Player of the Year. I know you don't want to hear that. You were recognized by the AJC. You were considered a top 20 quarterback, and I know nationally, as far as pro-style quarterbacks, you're high up there. So you like to kind of poo-poo your athletic prowess, but you were highly recognized, according to my biographical research, by a lot of different people, and ultimately you landed there in Fayetteville and playing at Arkansas.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. I mean, I had a great experience there at Landmark. We had a great coaching staff. Kenny Dallas was our head coach. Wayne Brantley was my offensive coordinator, who was a great guy to play for. Robbie Ross was a mainstay on that staff. I had some great coaches there, and I'm leaving out a bunch of names. And then we had a really special class. I was fortunate to play with good players. We had an undefeated 8th grade, 9th grade season, and then had a pretty good run in varsity. So, I do think one of the, not to deflect again, but I think one of the keys to a quarterback playing well is everyone around them playing well. And so I was fortunate to have, really good teammates, good coaches during that time period. And then, Arkansas was one of those things, like I didn't know anything about Arkansas until the recruitment process started. I knew that Bill Clinton was from there, and I knew the '94 basketball team won the national championship, and that was about all I had. So
shout out to Scotty Thurman and those Hogs.
So we ended up, getting to know the place and know the state really well. So it ended up at that time felt like a really good fit, and then got there and had a good experience, great experience playing there, and kind of set up my coaching career.
Back then, in those Houston Nut teams, that was the one that nobody, in retrospect, you didn't want to play because it seemed like you guys were always kind of downplayed coming into the game, but you were the game or the team that nobody wanted to see, at least from a fan perspective, especially in early. Back then, we had the JP game of the week, the Jefferson Pilot.
Yeah.
But the team that would roll in, especially with one of those early kicks, and if your team was not awake, then Arkansas, it seemed like you guys kind of prided yourselves on spoiling Saturdays.
The program was in pretty good shape then. I mean, I go back when I really got interested in them, they just won the SEC West. A lot of people forget that they played in Atlanta. And then, in 2006, they won the West again. So the program was in really good shape and had put together, some 9 and 10 win seasons. And somehow, prior to me getting there, but even as I was there, they did a great job recruiting. I mean, you think about some of the first-round draft picks, Sean Andrews, Matt Jones was, unreal as a quarterback, Ahmad Carroll, Chris Houston was a first-round pick, Jamal Anderson was a first-round pick, played with Darren McFadden, Felix Jones, Peyton Hillis. So, there was a time, too, where it was kind of like, if it was David and Goliath, there were – sometimes, we were Goliath too,
Yeah.
Where they had gotten to, that program was pretty strong at that time. And Houston did a great job, putting those teams together. And I think, the teams, played hard and played really tough. He had some really, really good assistants on those staffs too. And so it was a great experience. And then, had Bobby Petrino there for one season. And, Bobby ended up obviously doing a really good job, had a really good 4-year run there too. So, and I think for someone that, going into coaching, having multiple experiences was really good too, because you see different philosophies and different ways to do things, which I think broadens your education.
I do want to go back, and we did not recognize you, and I should. You won at Landmark Christian the Headmasters Award for student leadership.
Oh my gosh. I didn't expect you did some digging on that.
I'm doing some digging.
I
got all kinds of stuff. Yeah. Headmasters Award. So you're a natural born leader.
Man, I don't know. Somebody thought I was, but they may have pulled names out of a hat for that award.
I do want to talk about your NFL career. You're not the only person that has played a snap or two.
Well, I mean, that's like
No.
preseason.
Coach,
I mean, look,
Hall of Fame game. They don't just hand those out. You're with the Titans. You sign as a free agent, and you're playing. You were 1 for 2 passing that night.
Correct.
Well, technically,
you could say I was 2 for 2. You could say I was 2 for 2.
You did have a completion to one of your teammates. Unfortunately, you also threw it to a Buffalo Bill, and it was returned for a pick six.
That's right. That's exactly right.
But you completed it.
The ball didn't hit the ground.
We take wins where we can get them.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you ever go back and watch that game?
No, I don't. I got enough problems right now as it is. I'm not worried about that. No, I don't.
Like you have a quarterback who's had a tough practice, a tough day, and you're like, hey, you think that's bad? Watch this.
Well, it's funny because the interception, we got the headset last year. I've never even told anybody this, but where we can talk to the quarterbacks. And right before that play, the route I threw the interception on, the OC said, hey, don't forget about it. We called it a boy route, B-O-Y, which stood for bring over Y. He goes, hey, don't forget about the boy. And went back the other way. And so now, I'm very self-conscious. Trent and I talk about it all the time about, like, not giving the quarterback too much. You got to let him play a little bit. So anyway, that does haunt me still a little bit, I have to admit.
I'm so glad that I could bring it up.
Yeah, you're the first person that's brought that up in a long time.
Hey, that's what bios will do. And there's all kinds of stuff that are out there. You start your coaching career 2012, New Mexico Highlands, as the passing game coordinator. Not familiar with New Mexico Highlands.
I wasn't either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that your first time to New Mexico?
I think we drove through when I was 3 years old going to the Grand Canyon, I think. But basically, yes, it was my first time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything that you were able to ascertain from that stop, be able to learn from that stop?
Absolutely.
That have traveled with you?
Yeah, that experience, it's really funny you're asking me about it because it's been on the forefront of my mind for about 3 months now. And the reason I say that, I'm going to have to back up a little bit,
fine.
and I'll tell you a little bit about this Highlands experience. But right now, in the day and age of the transfer portal, your team is turning over, with pretty good regularity twice a year because there's 2 portal windows.
Right.
And we've got guys that are going to join this team in June that we need to play for us, game 1.
Yeah.
And they need to contribute. And you don't want to say, well, they couldn't learn the offense. Well, they couldn't keep up. They couldn't. So you've got to find a way to have a teaching progression that works from, June on, to where they can go play and play confidently, play at a high level. Well, we've been in programs for a long time that are, 3, 4, 5-year programs. Guys might redshirt, they might, be an early enrollee in the spring, and they've got a longer runway to the season. So how do you put a system together where you can go be really effective? And some people are just going to say, well, just make it really simple. Let's just go really simple. Well, if you make it really simple, you know how else it's simple for? The team you're playing against. So you've got to try to, work this dichotomy of, hey, repetition and simplicity, but we've got to have enough diversity to be able to pivot and be hard to play against. And so how do you find that sweet spot under these circumstances? Well, let me now take you back to New Mexico Highlands. The thing that was interesting about that experience is that most of our team got there after the 4th of July. So we basically had 4 weeks in July, 4 weeks in August. We had to kick the ball off and go play. And the guys I had worked with had coached under those circumstances before. And I think collectively we put together a really good plan. And we went out, we won 8 games, which to this day is the only time New Mexico Highlands has won 8 games since 1999. Quarterback finished second in the country in offense, so you can't say you can't play good offense. I think we had averaged just under 500 yards a game. So anyway, I've been going back, I think about all my football experiences. I go, what is this the most like? And it's a lot like coaching at that experience. And I'm thinking, okay, how did we teach under those circumstances? How did we install our offense under those circumstances? And then so anyway, that is why I've been thinking about Highlands so much here lately. But yeah, it was an interesting deal. One of my best friends who I played with at Arkansas, he was an all SEC guard. His name was Stephen Parker. Steve had been at Oklahoma State as a GA for a few years. He went there as the offensive line coach. The coordinator left. He got promoted to coordinator. He called me to see if I would come be the passing game coordinator and coach the quarterbacks. And like a lot of Division II programs, we were understaffed. So that turned into being the head strength coach too. So it was like you're doing everything, which was awesome for me because when you're the strength coach, it's kind of like being a special teams coordinator. You interact with the whole team. Right. So I got to know everybody. So that was a lot of fun. But I went out there and I'd never been there. I didn't know anything about New Mexico. I didn't know that was a school, honestly, and just because of the part of the world I was from. So it ended up being a magical experience. We had a lot of fun. That team, not only did we get the scheme and all that together, but the team came together and gelled, and bonded really quick. And we went out and really had a great season. And it was a lot of fun. It really was.
Also, in addition to that, a lot of people in this state, you were an assistant with the St. Louis Rams.
Briefly. Yeah, it was more like an internship.
St. Louis. Yeah. And that was when they were still in St. Louis, 2013.
Yeah. Jeff Fisher was the head coach, and Coach Fish had been at the Titans when I was there. And so that was a very short stint. It was a good experience. It was a good opportunity. But I probably was looking. Long story short, it was a good experience, but also it ended up leading to a great opportunity the next year to go be a graduate assistant at Alabama too.
How did that come about?
Well, so when I was going back to playing at Arkansas for Houston Nut, one of our graduate assistants was a guy named Jeff Nord, And so Jeff worked with the offensive line. He'd been a former player there, worked with the offensive line. Jeff somehow, and I still don't really know how, he ended up on the Alabama staff, I think in 2009, under Coach Saban and working for Joe Pendry, who was the offensive line coach at the time. And so, anyway, somewhere around Christmas time, maybe a little bit before that, Jeff reached out and said, hey, our coordinator's leaving and we're going to have new GAs too. Are you interested? And I was interested. And so Jeff helped get the ball rolling and get my foot in the door on that, and kind of got involved with that process, and really grateful to him for that, and grateful for Coach Saban for giving me an opportunity. And it was an interesting time to get there because they were undergoing change with Lane Kiffin coming in to be the offensive coordinator. So, but it was an awesome opportunity, and really grateful, that I was able to get it.
What is that first day like? What is that interaction like with Coach Saban? Is he coming in? Is he addressing the whole room? How much on a day-to-day, I'm not talking in season, but
Right.
how much interaction is there between that staff, whether it's grad assistants, whether it's the analyst and the actual head coach?
Yeah, I think you're going to probably hear from them in some capacity most days. Maybe it's a quick staff meeting, and then so there's the staff meetings that happen pretty regularly. And then on the offensive side of the ball, there's times he's going to come over, and you're going to hear from him a lot there. And particularly that year, we heard from him a whole lot because we were going through some change on offense. He had, one thing he did is he had a system, and he asked the coordinators to come in and learn the offense instead of he didn't want a coordinator to have to come in and change everything, because now it's going to require the entire building to learn. He would rather have one guy learn what was already in place.
That's the Alabama offense.
Correct. Now, that being said, he was still open to change. He was open to, creativity, to, progressing, evolving, but it was still going to be inside the confines of what was already in place. So during that time period, we heard from him a lot, where he would come over and talk about what had been done in the past, where we wanted it, what, some of the staff had done in the past, and where he wanted to take it, and what he saw the offense doing in the future. So heard from him a lot. And then on an interpersonal level, there would be things that would come up, periodically. Hey, he could be involved with recruiting, could be, how's it going with a freshman quarterback? So it was kind of, and a lot of it was seasonal, in terms of when you were going to interact with him the most.
Well, with him and that building in particular with the analysts, it was kind of a who's who. There were a lot of recognizable names. I can only imagine you as a young coach and aspiring to move up in the ranks, you were a sponge and being able to absorb so much just valuable, been there, done that experience.
It was a great opportunity to learn. It really was, because we had some great coaches there, obviously starting with Coach Saban, onto the coordinators, onto the assistants. But then, as you point out, there were some analysts there, some of which were high-profile names, guys you've heard of. But then there were a lot of analysts and GAs there, and young guys, student assistants, that were not household names, that were really good coaches and really sharp guys. And I learned a lot from them too. I learned a lot from young defensive student assistants or young defensive analysts that no one knew their name then. You might now, Glenn Schumann, defensive coordinator at Georgia. I could list a lot of those guys. Sure. Where you would go and pick their brains. So it was a really rich environment to learn. And that was one of my favorite parts about it.
Everybody thinks about Coach Saban. Was there ever a berating of the staff, like collectively, where he just comes into the building? He's like, all of you guys, you messed up. You failed.
Well, I think Coach Saban, no, not to that degree. No, but he, I think he did hold people accountable. And, but I think most of the time, there was a reason for it. I don't think there were a lot of times where if he, was correcting something that you said, well, he missed the mark on that. Usually he was right, and usually he had a reason. And then, some of them, there were some funny ones too that, you'd get a chuckle out of too.
Was there an unspoken rule when you could leave the building, when you had to be there? Was that the Saban rule?
To a degree. I think one, you didn't want him to be in the building, and typically we left when he left a lot of the times. Now, I think one of the interesting things is my perception, and I don't want to speak for him, he'd have to speak for himself, but my perception, he's very routine oriented, and most times of the year he was the workday started at 7:30. So he wasn't like a 6 a.m. guy, 5 a.m. It was like pretty regularly 7:30, and we were never really there till like midnight or anything crazy, but we worked very hard while we were there. And So typically when he would leave, we'd leave, and you'd want to beat him in the building and be there prior, obviously, to the 7:30 start. But it's funny, and I don't think he would mind me sharing this, but he would lecture the staff. It felt like about once a year in August, right before the season started, where he would say, look, you're not going to get any brownie points from me for being here till 2 a.m. So
Interesting.
Yeah, he's like, develop a routine that is sustainable, because if you don't, midway through the season, you're going to be dead. You're not going to be able to think. You're going to lose your creativity. You're going to be short-tempered with the players. So his idea was, hey, while we're here, let's work. But, I felt like one thing I appreciated, and I was probably good for me to see that as a young coach, because I have to say I didn't really approach my New Mexico Highlands job this way, is that to try to create a routine where you're not, there at all hours of the night, where you're at least getting some sleep. So your brain, you're functioning at a higher level, late into the season.
All right. And I don't think you were stepping out by saying it seems like he's routine oriented. I've never worked for him, but I think that, Coach Saban would probably agree in a lot of different facets, not only professionally, but personally. And I think to some degree we all are.
Right.
We all have our routines. We continue here with UAB offensive coordinator Alex Mortensen. Coach, that leads us to where you are right now. And you getting the call from Trent Dilfer.
Yeah.
Describe that, and what were you thinking at the time? How did that conversation go?
Yeah, I mean, look, I was really excited to hear from Coach Dilfer. I was at Alabama for a long time, almost 9 years. And that, I had a brief stint where I actually went to the AAF one spring, which was a spring league.
Joe Pendry kind of brings him back in.
Joe Pendry,
great man.
Awesome guy. Tim Lewis was the head coach. Steve Logan was the OC. And that was another experience, by the way, where you had a short runway to kick off. Yeah. So that's another experience to learn from, too, during this time period. But anyway, so I was there a long time. And, my role kind of changed every year, and I felt like I, gained more responsibility. And so you kind of got two things going on. I'm learning from Nick Saban and other coaches on the staff, which is awesome. And then we had great quarterbacks there. I mean, you think about, and I'm going to leave some guys out, which I hate, but I mean, just think about Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones, Bryce Young, in order. So
and a few receivers to throw to.
Yeah, great players around them. So, but these were great players to work with, and they were great, people too.
Yeah.
Really enjoyable people to be around, and then you're learning from your leadership as well. So, I wasn't in a hurry to leave. As I got promoted and had more opportunities there. So I kind of set my anchor. So I wasn't ready to just leave for anything. There were things that started to come up, and probably with greater intensity my last 3 or 4 years there. And so why UAB? Why was this one exciting? One, there was an element of timing. It's one of those things you thought about, prayed about, and it felt right to me. It felt like the right time. I know it's a little bit intuitive, but it felt like the right time based on, that prayer and all those things. The other thing was Bryce was finishing. I'd gotten really close to Bryce Young, and so knew he was going to be moving on to the NFL. So that timed up. And then there were other parts, though, that drew me here, bigger things than that. One, I would say I was excited about Coach Dilfer. I had a lot of confidence in him. I'd gotten to know him through recruiting his players out of Lipscomb. Through, we took a lot of his players that had been in the Elite 11, quarterbacks. And so I felt like there's a strong leader there, a guy that will figure it out. Okay. The second thing is I trusted the person. I feel like he's a really good person. And third, I feel like he's got a great football mind too. This is a guy that played in the NFL for 14 years, had a lot of coordinators. So he's got some traditional training in football, but he's also a creative thinker. And I feel like he has a way of blending both of those. So I got excited about him. The second thing is I got excited about UAB. I feel like UAB, to me, one, they had been in Conference USA, and I think in 5 years, I think they'd won the conference 3 times, played the championship a 4th time. So there had been some success here in that league. And then I got excited about them moving up. Of course, we were taking them into the American. And so you knew that was going to present a new challenge. And as is the transfer portal, which was relatively new, and NIL. So, yeah, maybe they won under a different set of circumstances, but at least there's some history there. The location of UAB made me say, I think we can win here. One of the things we talk about in coaching a lot is your 5-hour radius in recruiting. Okay, think about UAB. Birmingham, I think, has got a lot of really good football players. You go 2 hours east to Atlanta and into South Georgia, ton of players. Go down to Mobile, Panhandle of Florida, and everything in between. Go to East Mississippi, go up to Nashville, North Alabama. I think we've got a great nucleus to recruit this roster. The guy that you're going to talk to here in a little bit, J.D. Morgan, went off to another school, but he came back home. He was in this radius. So I think the radius is great. I think we can win here. I think there's a city here that, I think we have people that want to support us, and I also think there's a city that's still waiting to come alive. I think there's a lot of people here that love football, and and even if they weren't UAB grads, I think there's a lot of pro Birmingham people here. So those were things that got me excited about coming to UAB. Now, the other part too, so you've got the leadership and Coach Dover, you've got what UAB is, and then the other part is kind of the cherry on top. Was I had an old coach tell me one time when I first got into coaching, he said, look, you're going to have people that are going to tell you to take any job, wherever it is, to advance your career, to make more money, and they're going to tell you where doesn't matter. He goes, I'm telling you right now, where you live does matter. He used, and no offense to people that love Buffalo, New York, but he used the example of Buffalo. He goes, I've lived in Buffalo. He goes, that's for some people. It's not for me. I don't want to live in Buffalo again. And so for me, I like living here. I love living here. I told you my mom's from Alabama, not far from Georgia. So I think UAB is a great city. I think it's something we can recruit to.
Yeah.
You think about it, we've got, approximately 20,000 students here, maybe a little bit more, when you roll them all together. And so you've got this good, college community here. But then also, it's not only a college town. You do have a city. You've got, real restaurants. You've got minor league baseball. You've got the UFL plays here. So there's some fun things to recruit to for people to do. And then, hey, you can get to the beach. Our facility is 8 minutes from the airport if you want to get out of town. So I felt like just in terms of the living part in the city, that was attractive as well. So for me, it was like when Coach Dover called, I was fired up. I was excited and ready to be a part of it. And I think anyone would tell you, people make a place, and I think that's true. And I think that's the final part of this is like, obviously Coach Dover is a part of those people, but also the staff he's assembled and the guys I get to work with every day are part of the reason you stay.
So many things that I want to unpack with you, and we're limited on time. I do want to get to this upcoming. We just had spring that got completed. This is going to be the third installment of your offense. First, and it's not like you had just stepped off the bus and you were thrown in there to be around college football and calling a game, but how was it? What are things that maybe a couple of things that you've learned in actually calling games, and you've got bullets that are flying rapidly
right.
at a high pace, especially with today's game. What have you learned in your first two seasons?
Well, I mean, certainly I've learned a lot. I do feel like I was very prepared going into it. I had really done. When you think about the jobs I've had, I'd been able to game plan, script. A lot of the things that involve, putting installations together. So a lot of things that involve coordinating I'd done, other than game day.
Right.
And so felt incredibly prepared for it, and then had been able to have some great examples on how they did game day. I think the first year we got here, I think our players and staff, everyone collectively did a really good job of pulling together and saying, okay, let's put together a plan and see how fast we can get this group up and running in the American Conference. With a group that I think we had like Brady Wilson may have been the only returning starter on the offensive line. So a lot of new players, guys that didn't know us, we didn't know them. And so we went out, and it was not a perfect season offensively by any means. There's a couple games I wish I could take the film and burn it, But we did go out and set a school record on offense. We averaged 450 yards a game, which was 18th in the country. First time we'd been in the top 20. And the other one too is, our quarterback, completed something like 73.5%, 74% of his passes, which I didn't even know this till recently. That's 9th all time. Not at UAB. That's 9th all time in the history of college football. We were able to do that in 1 year. So there were a lot of good things despite not making a bowl game. I think if you were to go, okay, now what did we learn? I think going into year two, I think overestimating. You think, okay, hey, we got a good percentage of the roster back, when in reality, we did have some new guys that needed to play. And so you think, well, we can build on this. Maybe there's some fundamental things that we can move through faster. And I think we would all say that was an error. And then consequently, trying to do too much, where we tried to take on a little bit too much. And I think we felt the consequences of that. Now, there's another thing, too, that, it's a little bit of a Captain Obvious statement, but you've probably heard Bill Belichick say it, too. Before you win a game, you've got to keep from losing it. In other words, don't give games away. And I think that's the second error that we made in that second year too many times is we've got to play more discipline. Less on forced errors, eliminate pre-snap penalties, and first and foremost, protect the ball. In this day and age, if you can win the turnover margin, win ball security, and if you can generate and win the explosive play battle, you've got a great odds of winning a game. So, but those were some things that I think going into year two that we learned and some errors we made. So, and again, it wasn't all bad or anything, but you're constantly learning and trying to get better and grow, and that would be what I would point to primarily.
And it all starts up front, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Offensive line.
It all starts with offense. It starts with, to me, you got to control the line of scrimmage on the offensive line and get the quarterback to play well, and then get everyone else playing to their strengths.
Our player of the week, J.D. Morgan, he's going to be instrumental in that offensive line. He joins the Inferno next. Welcome back into the Inferno podcast. Landon Roberts, UAB offensive coordinator Alex Mortensen. We continue to visit with Coach. And Coach, the gentleman to my left that we're going to bring on, he's going to be instrumental. He is a guy originally from the Birmingham area, Huffman High School, go Vikings to be exact. He then ventured out to Columbia, South Carolina to start and his college football playing career. But J.D. Morgan, we're glad that he's wearing the green and gold, right?
We're very glad J.D.'s wearing the green and gold and decided to come back home.
What is it for you as an offensive coordinator? I know the guys up front, but especially a guy like him to have a seasoned veteran that that you can count on. What does that mean to you? Is that your comfort? Is that your security blanket?
Absolutely. I mean, we feel really good. I sleep a little better at night knowing we got J.D. He's very dependable. He's hardworking. He doesn't know that. I know he's working when we're not around. He just does everything the right way. So I've got a great appreciation for him, and I think our whole staff does.
JD, welcome to the Inferno. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. So you go to South Carolina. Let's talk about, first of all, your high school career coming out of Huffman, choosing to go to Columbia, South Carolina. What was that decision like, and ultimately, what did you learn there in your time and playing for the Gamecocks?
Well, I wanted to go to South Carolina, so for my senior year, I was going to be committed to a school, and it was between them and Georgia Tech, so I decided to go to South Carolina. And what I learned from there was basically being a hard worker, because my first year there, I didn't think I was going to make it, to be honest.
From the grind of from the athletics with academics, or
I was good on athletics. I'm an academics. I was always an A/B honor roll student,
right.
So you didn't have to worry about that. But athletically, I just wasn't ready yet. So they leaned up on me. They took me up under their wing, and basically learned how to be a D1 football player.
Your freshman honor roll, by the way, we're going through accolades in your freshman season. You've always been very studious. I'm glad that you brought that up. But the game of college football and what it takes in the day-to-day grind, doesn't matter what conference you play in, doesn't matter the logo. If you're going to be successful, there's a recipe for that, and there's no getting around it, and there's no shortcuts. What did you learn from a work ethic standpoint on just the football side of things and day-to-day and what it takes to compete at a high level?
Well, I believe the more you put in, the more you get out. So we always in the building doing extra work, extra film, in the training room, always working on something, get 1% better each day.
UAB, that opportunity presents itself. What did that mean for you? Was it an easy decision to come back home?
It was easy, very easy, very easy.
What about UAB was the attraction other than the proximity to where you grew up and you played your high school ball?
At the time, I knew Coach Coleman. He was at Carolina before he went to UAB, so I already had connection with UAB. Then being back home just made it completely easier.
Playing last year and being within the program, and now that you have a season under your belt heading into this year, and I know that it's so topsy-turvy, and it's not just with the roster specifically here in Birmingham. It's across the country, and you see it, and I cover it for what I do, a regular job on a day-to-day basis. It almost makes you nauseous at this point, and not any of the things as far as student athletes and NIL and the transfer portal, but keeping up with everything. And it seems like intercollegiate athletics is kind of in flux. But On the playing side of things, what did you learn last year that you're hoping to take in from that experience this year that hopefully proves to be more wins on the field?
Just being more confident, because when I came in, I wasn't truly it was rough when I left Carolina. I was broken mentally, and the whole staff brought me back in mentally, and I kind of had like injury during the spring, so I missed out during the spring, and I was just out of it mentally. But everybody brought me back in and helped me for the upcoming season.
Coach Mortensen, how much interaction do you have? Because we think about you and the quarterbacks, obviously, and the game plan, but how much interaction, would it surprise people how much interaction you have? And they have their offensive line coach, but you actually have with those position groups.
We have a decent amount, but certainly first and foremost, I mean, he's going to spend most of his time, as you pointed out, with his offensive line coaches and, Coach McCants, Coach Steele, Coach Jordan, who we just added. But, quarterback, I mean, one, as a coordinator, I want to work with everybody to a degree. Now, I would like to let our position coaches, Coach Dilfer and I like to let our position coaches do their job. But, there's just some natural things, especially as quarterbacks, where we're going to work with them. Pass protections, run game, mic points. There's a lot of communication that has to happen. So, we have a good bit of interaction and communication through the week and even on game day. We really do. So, and JD's one of those guys, like, I've always enjoyed, talking to him because he gives me good feedback, gives us good feedback in game. So he's one of those guys that really is easy to communicate with and has been really helpful.
How many times last year did you either to yourself or to your teammates coming back to the huddle go, man, what are we running there?
It was a good amount of times.
Was it a good amount of times?
Yeah.
And those are all Coach Dilfer's calls.
Yeah, we'll go with it. No,
Coach Dilfer's really good about telling everyone that the plays that don't work out, they're usually ones that he overruled.
That's kind of him to say that, but I think I could say I've shared in some of those, and I think we all have had our fingers in the pie. But I think. Yeah, I mean, I think the key, to having a good program is you want everyone to accept responsibility as much as possible. And I think and I know you're making light of it, but I do think it is an important thing that we do as coaches. But also you want players that accept responsibility too. And I think if you can set that example, as the leader of the program, then and get everyone else to do it, you're gonna have a better team. If it's not always, well, I confess it's his fault, right? So
yeah. As far as the makeup of the team, I know that you got guys that are coming back, and I've heard this from the defensive players this year that have joined us here on this podcast, and they've said, or players that were a part of last year's team, and that togetherness. It's not offense and defense, but it's more of a team mentality. I want to hear it from your standpoint on the offensive side, because I've heard from the defensive sides. How is it different?
It's not a lot of fighting, no self-individualism. We all want to be better together. We all want to win together.
And there's something to be said for that, right?
Yeah.
And as far as meeting these new teammates, Coach Dilfer said, hey, I'm not going to have a formal deal where we go around the room and everybody tell a fun little story about themselves. That's on you guys to get together. How has that been, the acclimation and getting to know some of these new guys?
It's been going good.
Good?
Yeah.
Anything exciting to report?
Just a little competition.
It's like he wants to say something here, Coach. You can say you're among friends. A little competition?
It's a little competition.
As far as? Get pretty heated?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
But we always want to get each other better, though. So when everything's settled off the field, we all buddy in the locker room. So it's just leave everything on the field. Is
there a particular set that Coach Mortensen will call? You don't have to give the specific play, but that you're like, yeah, this is my wheelhouse.
There's like three plays.
3 plays?
Yeah.
Can you tell us? Do you want him to give away what those 3 plays
I don't
are?
mind. That's okay. He can, if you want to talk about some things you like doing, that's okay. I mean, I think it's not giving away the nuclear football.
What do you like? What are those 3 plays that you're really comfortable with that Coach Mortensen will call?
Like we got a trick play.
Okay, don't give that one away.
Okay.
Yeah, leave that one out. Trick play is no good. What are the other ones? Is it a run play? Is it a pass play?
It's one run play, one pass play, and just know I could be able to show my athleticism.
Yeah. Well, you can tell. I mean, I could just see you walking into the studio here. You're nimble. And you're a big guy. What, 315? Is that right?
320 now.
320?
JD's a very good athlete.
You can tell.
Yeah, he's a very good athlete.
Your upbringing, did you play any other sports?
Basketball.
Basketball? Okay. And that helps with the footwork and just athleticism for a guy with your frame and everything else. We continue here on the Inferno podcast for you and looking at that group, or maybe looking, you don't have to compare, Coach, but you've probably seen a difference with some of the connectivity of the new faces and maybe how they're evolving in their relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things we tried to do, starting with the December portal, because we had a lot of spots to fill, was really emphasize character. You know, and that's not just off the field character, but it's like competitive character. What kind of teammate are they? Will they buy in? Are they excited about being a part of something bigger than themselves? And it does feel like we're headed there. A team that is going to play really hard, is going to play for each other, that loves each other, and is really bought into trying to create team success and knowing that individual success is going to come from that. And it's not going to be, well, you know, I didn't get the ball enough, like, or this or that. You know, so there's going to be some of that to some degree, but that, so what I can say is that, and I think proof of that is this spring I had as much fun coaching as I've had in a long time because of the kind of guys we've got.
Yeah.
You know, and now obviously we went and filled a few more spots in the spring portal, and we hope and believe we filled them with the right kind of guys. Now look, have we faced any real adversity yet? No. So that's going to, you know, be a more revealing piece of, you know, what kind of team we've got and what kind of people are in there. But right now I'm really excited about the group, and it does feel like they're coming together. It really does.
Personal goals first on the field for next season. What are your personal goals, JD, as a player?
Well, I want to make all conference and get invited to the Senior Bowl.
That's two really good individual marks to try to achieve, and that would hopefully translate into a lot of success. Without speaking for all of your teammates, what's the team goal for you?
Just to win.
Just
whatever
win.
it takes.
Whatever it takes to win. You love hearing that, don't you?
Love it. Absolutely love it.
All right, we're going to continue. We have the lightning round coming up next.
Oh, boy.
And these are going to be questions, and hopefully you haven't been looking, but these are questions that you have not been privy to, and these are just things that come to my mind that I think that would be interesting or awkward for you to try to answer. The Inferno lightning round next. Welcome back into the Inferno podcast. Landon Roberts, UAB offensive coordinator Alex Mortensen. You got JD Morgan, who's going to be anchoring, one of the anchors of that offensive line. It is now time for our lightning round. These are just questions that we come up with. Neither one of our guests, Coach Mortensen or JD, have been privy to. We ask them and we'll alternate. And sometimes I might want you to go a little bit further as to why you answered the way that you did. Okay? Try not to put you in too awkward of a situation. Are we ready, guys? Yep. I just need a verbal okay.
Sure.
All right. Oh, sure. Well, okay is what we asked for, Coach. That'll be a demerit for you. All right. First question for you, and then you. Who do you immediately think of when you hear the acronym GOAT?
Coach Saban came to mind.
That's fine. You go Nick Saban. I think a lot of people will agree with you. When you hear the acronym GOAT, greatest of all time, what person do you think about?
LeBron James.
LeBron James. That is a demerit for you. Michael Jordan is the best ever. Are you with me on that one?
Coach Dilfer is going to kill you for that.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, that's not good for you, Jay. I was not trying to get you in trouble.
Hey, you got the courage to say what you believe.
You know what? And say it. I've got a stat that I will roll out for you a little bit later on, but that's fine. Let's just move on, Landrum. Don't focus on it. He's a good guy. Here we go. Article, piece of clothing that you hate to wear, but you must wear out of necessity.
Jeans.
Jeans? Jeans.
I'm a shorts and sweatpants type of guy.
Shorts and sweats. You don't like the jeans. It's just the fabric. Is it the fabric? Is it the feel?
It's
the fit.
It's the fit.
It's the fit.
It's hard to find jeans my size.
That's a fair point. You are a large human being. What about you?
I really can't think of anything.
Really?
Maybe poorly fitted dress shoes, but that'd be, you know.
Like a tie?
Only if they're I don't mind. I don't really.
You don't mind a tie?
Doesn't really bother me.
Okay. Maybe that wasn't that good of a question. All right. Profession that you would pursue if you were not coaching?
Wow. I was going to say strength coach, but that's coaching. That doesn't count?
No. Let's go outside of.
Okay. I really have no idea. I wish, gosh dang, that's a tough one. I've given this zero thought.
What about well, that's lightning round. That's kind of the point.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so.
What about
Not helping you very much.
Would you be like a motivational speaker?
Yeah, maybe I could. Maybe something.
Is there something away from athletics that you're really skilled at?
No, I mean, I don't think so. I really, I mean, I like study. I listen to podcasts. I listen to things about history. Maybe I could try to teach history.
Okay, teach history.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Do you know what you want to do with your life?
No, I was
After
the same
football.
way. I always was into sports. It was football, basketball. So outside of that, I truly don't know.
You don't know. All right, we'll move on. Next question. Current football rule. In game that you would change if you were allowed to. We go to JD Morgan first. Current in-game rule in college football that you would change.
Blindside block.
Blindside block. You like to see it?
Like to see.
You encourage
That's
it.
football.
That's football.
That's football.
Okay, I don't argue with that.
I think I'll go with that too, as long as you're not targeting. I think we could be a little looser maybe on that one.
On the blind side. All right, good. We're coming to agreement. Best football movie ever made.
I guess I'm going to say Friday Night Lights.
Friday Night Lights.
I feel like I'm probably forgetting a really good one. But,
Okay, for me, it was The Program.
Yeah, that's a classic.
A little bit corny, but it was good, and it had Halle Berry in it.
Fair enough.
Fair.
For me, it was the blind side.
Blindside.
Yep.
Did you? Okay. All right. Yeah. That was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Really good movie. Okay, that's all I got on that one. Next one. Go-to junk food.
Chicken, sweets,
Sweets. Any particular sweet?
mainly ice cream.
Ice cream.
Probably not truly considered junk food, but I love Mexican food.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, chips and salsa. Does that qualify?
Yeah. Well, that's fine. You going queso? You going like a big vat of queso?
I like queso, but I like the salsa even more.
Do you like corn tortillas, flour tortillas?
I like both, but I probably lean towards corn.
Do you have a preference on your tortillas?
Not really.
All right. Junk food and ice cream, and you're going to go Mexican.
Yeah,
Okay. I could eat tacos every single day.
I could do.
Coach Dilford could as well. We've talked about that a few times. Guilty pleasure, TV, movie, TV or movie that you normally wouldn't admit, but you're going to today that you enjoy watching. I said that mine was the series Below Deck a few years ago. I found myself watching it. I was like, this is stupid, but I really enjoy watching it. I don't watch it anymore. But is there a TV show or a movie? Like if you said Sound of Music, that's
No. With me, it's Cars.
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 I'm not that guilty about this one, I confess, but Rocky 1 through 4. They're a little corny. You know, but they're great movies.
Which one's the best though?
One. Yeah. Why not one?
You're going Russian?
That's a great. I mean, they're all very good.
I'm going that one too.
They're all really good. The reason I think one,
Break you.
it is a great movie. I like one because I feel like you don't have to be a sports fan to appreciate one. I feel like the rest of them, you got to kind of like be into sports, which is part of the draw. But one is like, man, that's a movie about life. You know, you could just somebody getting back on their feet. You know, I think it's a great movie that could speak to anybody.
And who knew as far as them juicing up Drago, right? And then we found out with the Olympic scandal and how much of that doping was actually going on. That's exactly what they were doing. We know we're the writers that got all of that information. somebody inside that program. That guy was ripped though, right?
He was Dolph Lundgren,
Lundgren, and then Bridget Nielsen.
the Swede.
Bridget Nielsen was the little not the whatever. He was the assistant there, but she was.
I think it was his wife in the movie.
Yeah,
And kind of
was it
spoke
in
for him.
real life or
No, in the movie. I think she married Stallone in real life.
Stallone, that's right.
She married Stallone, but she played Drago's wife. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Overused sports phrase.
Nothing comes to mind right now.
What a game! I feel like
What a game.
I feel like that's starting to get played out a little bit.
What a game is. Yeah.
It doesn't really bother me that much, but it's probably getting there.
Okay. Best football venue you've ever coached or played in, or been to as a fan.
Wow. I'm gonna say, I don't know if this is truly the best venue, but for one moment in time, I went to a Falcons playoff game when Vic was there, and they were really good, and that place was electric. It was unreal.
Was that Georgia Dome at the time?
It was, yeah. It was incredible.
I say college, my career, I would say, because I've been to the Swamp. I've been to Texas A&M Stadium.
I mean, we all went to West Point last year. That was really cool. Know that they were renovating the stadium there at Army, but I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Some other.
But I would say professional, I would say Jacksonville.
Jacksonville. Okay. Something you wish would be invented.
I wish they would invent a better. Somebody's probably done this, but like a better aesthetic trash can for your car. I'm a big trash, like I drink a lot of water.
Yeah.
Just there's things, and
So
I don't
want all that stuff.
I don't
want to.
I don't want to take a trip every time I leave the car to throw things away. So I wish there was somewhere we could stash a trash can in the car that wasn't too spacious. You could maybe now you can talk about emptied every 3, 4, 5 days, just for paper, empty water bottles.
How about this? Center console pops up, right?
Yep.
You got a thing that feeds back to the trunk to a collection reservoir, and it's just like the vacuum sucking power that you would get at a car wash. So bottle goes through, kind of like through the bank line.
Sounds like a great idea.
When it's coming down to the tube.
Should do it.
Is that good?
I think it's pretty good.
I'll have the prototype to you tomorrow morning.
It's already made, the air fryer.
The air fryer.
Air fryer.
Air fryer's really good. If we had the ability, though, with the segways and the other little things, if we had the ability to fly, and you would have to put a maximum distance because of FAA and other regulations, we don't want to be getting into trouble, but I think you're sitting there in 280s backed up and it's gridlock, and you just need to get half a mile. If you had the ability to pull out that,
I would like the ability to fly. I don't want any. I don't. Let's. I
That's
don't want.
Skyway,
I
Segway.
don't want everyone to have the ability to fly.
No,
based
people
on
can't drive.
Based on some of the people I share the road with every morning.
No, can you imagine a 4-way stop up in the air?
Yeah.
How or just heavens, a blinking yellow light that just really trips people out here. I don't know why. You said air fryer. That's right. Okay. I've got one more. Something you despised growing up, but you appreciate now.
Man.
For me, it's yard work.
I would. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I'd have to think.
I love putting a good stripe on my yard, getting that thing edged up, looking good.
Yeah.
No, I would say
You're
crock.
like, yeah, that's,
No, it's.
I would say crock pot dinners.
crock pot dinners.
Yeah. I used to hate it as a kid.
Oh, you got a good roast.
Yeah. Mississippi pot roast.
What's Mississippi pot roast? Is that different than the pot roast that I've had?
They use like peppercini, not peppercini, some type of peppers,
Is it peppercini
I think.
they put in there?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had the
Make it a little more
Mississippi pot
spicy.
roast. That sounds delicious. I love all kinds of peppers.
I got one. Learning. This is gonna sound really bad. Learning. Like I think when I was in school, and I did fine in school, and I liked it to a degree, but it's like you're forced. You have to learn, and now it's like you have a greater appreciation. At least I do for learning new things.
You mentioned history and documentaries. I love going back and watch. It could be PBS, the Panama Canal, the history of it. And these are things that we were supposed to learn when we were in school, but it was information in and out. All right, I passed the test, done with it. But now I'll go back and I'll really try to learn these things. Yeah, which is always cool. I lied. There was one more question. If Trent Dilfer was an animal, what animal would he be?
I'm going to say it's like flip a coin between a lion and a bear. Because he's got the ability to display strength when he needs to, but isn't, going to exercise it all the time until it's necessary. And, maybe a wolf too, because wolves are pack animals, and he's still a team guy. I don't know. I'd have to think about this a little more, but yeah.
All right, so we've narrowed it down to lion, bear, and wolf.
Yeah, that's where. It
could be why. Yeah, you didn't say unicorn. That's good, I guess.
It'll be a certain type of bear, because once you get him mad, oh my God, everybody in the raid is gonna get feathered.
That whole head gets red, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He gets like a bright red. Well, guys, this has been a whole lot of fun. We appreciate it. JD, you good?
I'm good.
All right. Anything you want to tell Blazer fans before you leave?
Come to. I would say come to the games.
Yeah. Maybe they'll see one of those plays that you like so much.
Yeah.
Right. Anything you want to leave our Green and Gold faithful with?
Just really appreciate those of you that support us. It means a lot. And, our team, our staff is working incredibly hard right now, and looking forward to taking the field, and hope to see you guys there.
UAB offensive coordinator Alex Mortensen, UAB offensive lineman J.D. Morgan, the Inferno podcast. We continue. Inferno podcast continues. When I think back to my childhood and I think about some of those fun moments, some of those fun memories, a lot of them happened during the summertime. You think vacation and being out of school, that's great. But also you think about camp, summer camp. And I'm not talking, and those are great, just about your typical summer camp when we think about canoeing, kayaking, archery, crafts, skits, all of that good stuff. But how about a specific sport and to be trained by some of the best in the business? Check out UABsports.com, and across the summer months, whether it's Johnny or Susie and they're interested in a particular sport or they just want to learn more about it, they can do so with a host of different sports across the UAB campus. You can find out more, as always, comprehensive list of the camps, information about those camps, but also up-to-date news, scheduling, and all you need to know green and gold athletics there at UABsports.com. This is the Inferno Podcast, the official podcast of UAB Athletics. Blazer fans, this is the place each week to get an inside look into UAB Athletics. This episode is brought to you by Pearl River Resort.